It's a great question. So I'm sorry. Yeah, good question. So the question is about how we're funding this, whether we're doing fundraising, grant funding. So the program in Skokie is a state-funded program. It's a line item in the state budget, and we use every penny of that money to have our living room in Skokie. The living room in Evanston is different because we have different services that are provided. So it can't simply be funded by the Department of Human Services, for example, and we will need to do some fundraising. We currently have enough funds to get through probably the first 2.5 years, maybe even 3. But right now we're starting to think about what we do next, whether we're going to look for some grant funding that is related to integrated care, which is really important. You know, how many services can we provide someone under one roof so that they don't have to go from place to place to place? And so we're working on that right now. Thank you for that question. That's a good one. 13 years.
Thank you, Ann. All right, we're going to move on with the transportation portion of our agenda, but thank you to the Ann Rainey. I'm Jonathan Nusma, council member for the 4th Ward, for those of you who don't know me. And ever since I assumed the role that I am now in 3 years ago, I would occasionally get concerns, emails, phone calls from residents about speed bumps and about traffic safety. And it's been a constant kind of low-grade concern in the community until recently. Within the last 6 months, just kind of anecdotally, the number of concerns and complaints and calls that I'm getting have really gone up. And I was talking with Juan and with Chrissy about this, and they've kind of experienced the same thing. So we thought it would be a good idea to do this joint ward meeting to bring everyone together and hear from some city staff about initiatives that are currently underway to address many of these issues, and then also to hear some concerns from community members. So, we will be a little bit later, kind of throwing the room open to hear concerns, specific, intersections. Can we get a crosswalk here? Can we get a speed bump there? So we do have room in the agenda for that later this evening. So before we get moving, I'm just curious, by a show of hands, how many people drove here tonight? All right, that's, I don't know, half or so. I drove because I had to bring that sign. I couldn't strap that on my bike. How many people, show of hands, rode a bike here? Okay, maybe 25%, including Sarah Fiorito, who we're going to hear from soon. How many people took public transportation here? 1. How many people walked here or lived close enough to walk? A handful. So maybe half driving, half, some form of lower carbon transit. Okay, I was just curious. We are going to continue here as soon as I click that and and click that. We're going to hear first from Sarah Fiorito, then from Sergeant Faison, and then we were hoping to hear from somebody from our Public Works Department. They could not make it tonight, so I'm going to pinch hit for Public Works. But I'm going to introduce Sarah Fiorito. Sarah is an Evanston native, joining us after an international career in the mobility space, if I could summarize it that way. So welcome home. Sarah assumed this role 3-4 months ago, less than 3 months ago, and this position has been vacant for more than 2 years. So it took us a long time to find the right person. I believe we have now. So I want to introduce Sarah and turn the mic over to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And I just want to say hello to everyone. And if you could go to start pulling up the slides. Awesome. So my name is Sarah Doobie Fiorito. I have been in the transportation and mobility coordinator role for less than 3 months now. As Councilmember Nusma said, I am from here. I'm an ETHS grad. I traveled these streets for a long time, and I am really excited to be here with you all. So if you go to the next slide. Okay, so in transportation work and in thinking about policy, I like to really zoom out. I like to think really big picture about where we are as a society and just kind of the possibilities of what we can do and also where we come from. So this is a photo that kind of gives a little bit more context of where we are right now and what transportation has been like in this region since time immemorial for a long time, right? We're on Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi land, and a lot of other indigenous nations have been here for a long time. So you know, there's a lot of different ways that people have been moving in this area for a long time, including canoe as a major way, including walking. So yeah, those are some kind of points of reference that I like to think about when I think about the possibilities of where we can go. This is a photo that I just think is interesting just to kind of give some more context. This is Evanston lakefront back in the day before Evanston was even founded. So, you know, before any city infrastructure was built, this is kind of the lakefront vibe. So it's kind of good context. Moving a little bit closer to where we are now, this is an era of Evanston where we had streetcars, which we no longer have, but are actually really great public transit infrastructure from a carbon perspective and also from an efficiency perspective and movement perspective. So that's great that we have that precedent here in Evanston. This is Dempster and Chicago Avenue. And this is where we are today. I think this is a very nice photo. This is a Metra, but we also, as many of you know, we also have CTA lines here. We have both rail and bus. We also have, you know, obviously, as we know in this room, we've got infrastructure for car use. We've got infrastructure for walking, like our sidewalks, for wheelchairs, scooters, our young people in strollers, all the ways that people get around. And I'm going to keep going. And before I go any further, I just want to say my intention right now with this presentation is to kind of ground kind of where we're going and kind of give a little bit of context on my role, because my role has been vacant at the city for over 2 years, which is a long time. And so my intention right now is to kind of give a little bit of a precedent for what is kind of guiding my work, both from what I was actually hired to do in my job description, which I'm actually going to get to at the end of the presentation, and also some of the policy precedents and trends that are part of what I am responsible to answering to in my role. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So first and foremost, from an equity perspective, a lot of people in the city of Evanston do not own cars. That may be by choice, but for a lot of people, that's also not by choice. That's because cars are extremely expensive. On average, they cost about over $1,000 per month, and that's for really affordable stuff relatively. So that's something that I definitely keep in mind when I think about transportation is, hey, we got to make sure that our system is actually reflecting price accessibility for people, and we can't just design a system around only very expensive vehicles. Go ahead. Accessibility is something else that we need to be thinking about as a city. This is actually quite close to where I grew up. I grew up in Skevinston. So this is actually Gulf, pretty close to McCormick. The north side of the road is right there. So that's Evanston proper. And you can see right there, there's like a walking path because there's no sidewalk and people still need to go walk there for various reasons. There's still transit stops on the street and things like that. So you can see humans are still needing to get through there. I don't think that would be very comfortable to navigate in a wheelchair, probably not with a stroller, probably not with a skateboard, a scooter if you're a kid. So that's another point of reference. Okay. And this is probably a little small for some folks to see, but long story short, this is something else that we're definitely keeping in mind is wellness and physical activity. So according to recent census findings, a large percentage of people in Evanston, like our national counterparts, do not get any physical activity during their leisure time. So you can see in parts of Evanston, over 30% of people are not getting physical activity during their leisure time. You know, that's over 10% everywhere in Evanston, over 20% a lot of places in Evanston. So, you know, a lot of people in our society right now are not moving their bodies really much. And that's something that we want to be thinking about also when we're thinking about transportation stuff. How's everybody doing? I feel like people look tired. Are people tired? I'm tired, so I'll put that forth. Is there a way that I can make this more engaging for folks? Okay, okay, I'm gonna walk around. I don't want to block this. I see there's also a camera. It's kind of I do like to dance, but I feel like this isn't the time. Okay, so safety, another thing I just want to bring into context, because I know that we have a lot of complaints around speed around the city. So and also a lot of people who are driving and just in general, when we're late for work or when we're trying to get somewhere and we haven't left enough time, I'm definitely the very big culprit of that. We like to get there fast, right? So, but the faster you go when a collision happens, the more likely you are to very seriously injure someone. And this is just a little graphic. This was put out by another municipality. Sorry that I didn't source everything that's on here. I ran out of time. I got really excited. I kept wanting to add information. But long story short, the faster you're going, the more likely you are to kill someone or seriously injure them. And especially at some of the higher speeds, once you're going over 30 miles per hour and things like that, you start getting into really high percentages of fatalities if someone is struck. So I just want to quickly mention Vision Zero. How many people in the room have heard of Vision Zero? Okay, I also have. So Vision Zero is a movement. It's an international movement, and the movement is basically geared towards saying, hey, we don't think people should die on the roads. This is not an inevitability. This is not something that needs to happen. This is not something that we need to accept. People do not need to just die because they're traveling. We need to start designing and thinking about transportation systems differently. An example of that is, for example, you know, right now we kind of think, oh, accident. It's an act, you know, they got killed in an accident. This is kind of an inevitability. Vision Zero thinking says, no, traffic deaths are preventable. Also, you know, a lot of what we do here is like, oh, okay, we got to enforce it better. We got to make sure that we catch in time or make sure people aren't speeding. Vision Zero says, hey, we need to design our system so that people cannot speed, so that this is not even a potentiality because we know humans make mistakes. Yes. Thank you. Yes. So this is about really thinking about really how can we value human life and how can we, and not just human life, you know, I've ridden on my bicycle on many roads and also walk around. The amount of animals that are constantly struck. I mean, the roadkill is, you know, our road systems really hurt a lot of life. So this is something for us to be thinking about as well. Sustainability, I think this is a common one people think about with this. Long story short, just to kind of break this down, on the left here, this is from our partners at CMAP, Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. You can see this is a couple, on the left is a couple of our main emission sources in the region, and road transportation is a major one. And then on the right, they actually break down, well, what percentage of our road transportation is actually individual, like people traveling versus industry. And a very large percent of transportation emissions are passenger vehicles. So this is how we move around our bodies, represents a very large percentage of emissions. And this is the city of Evanston. So, and I think we saw this very well represented in this room. We had a pretty good micro segment here. So in the city of Evanston, travel to work, we've got like pretty much over 50% of people who are driving alone to work. And then kind of the rest of that is a mix of people doing other stuff. We got people walking and biking, we got transit, we got some people carpooling, maybe they're scootering, skateboarding, the other stuff. So that's kind of where we're at right now in Evanston. It's a little bit less single occupancy car use than some of our other suburban counterparts, but still many people are using cars as their main mode of transportation. So I believe this, sorry that I don't have the dates on there. So I believe this was 2017 to 2019. No, this is not, this so they actually, in some more recent ones, they do have work at home now as a different bar. And livability. So something that I definitely like to think about when I think about all the possibilities of where we can go as a society with our transportation systems is just the happy funness of just making really beautiful, amazing, you know, communities that are just vibrant and fun and exciting and make people want to be out on the street and moving around. So, and that's from Evanston. I believe that's the Custer Street Fair. All right. Are you still with me? Okay. Woo. All right. Okay. So, now as for how we're going to take action on this at the city of Evanston, and I know that the city of Evanston has amazing groundwork on this, especially compared to a lot of Evanston's municipal counterparts around the country. So this is actually a direct quote from the job posting that I applied to. I was kind of impressed to even see this on the job posting. I was like, I actually still need to figure out whose wording this was. So I'm going to read it because it's kind of, I think it's pretty compelling. The city of Evanston aspires to be recognized as a world-class leader for providing and coordinating a full array of quality mobility transportation options with innovation, integrity, and teamwork. World class. That's not just national class. That's world class. Do people think that's possible? Who here doesn't think that's possible? Fair. Very fair. Very fair. So I do think it's possible. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of community building to actually build support for this in the community and make people feel like this makes sense and is something that we can all be excited about. There's a lot of reasons that people might be skeptical. There's a lot of reasons that people might be like, okay, yeah, or okay, yeah, maybe for some people, but you're not going to do that for me. And maybe I'm going to get priced out, or maybe this isn't going to end up working for me. So I think a big part of this is saying, how do we make this a reality for our community and really our whole community? All right. So I'm going to break down some of the main functions of my role. And part of me doing this is so that you can know how to collaborate with me and how to and what really the function of my role in the organization is so that I can help move things forward with you. So part of my role is coordinating citywide transportation and mobility goals and programs. For example, the city has a goal to be carbon neutral by 2050. It also has a goal to be an ADA accessible community. There's a lot of other different goals related to equity, related to economic development, related to health, and a lot of that stuff touches transportation. So my role is to really move our transportation system forward in a way that actually meets a lot of these policy precedents, which many of which have been established for a long time. Okay, and another one of those, as I said, is really doing all of that within the context of all of these plans, which really lay a pretty strong foundation to move Evanston's transportation system into a more innovative place where people have better options. And this is some of the plans that touch my work. Most of these are named, except for 2 were named explicitly in my job description. And the other ones were named implicitly in my job description. So a lot of work to do. Okay. Also formulating and administering transportation policies and procedures. So right now, Evanston, like a lot of communities, has a lot of like ad hoc ways that it approaches things. Like an easy one that comes to the top of my head is bike parking. Evanston thus far doesn't have like a coordinated bike parking approach. It's very ad hoc. It's like maybe someone requests something, maybe something, right? The city could have something like, hey, we want to have this an access in a certain distance from every business, or we want to make sure that XYZ, whatever. So that's part of my role. Or who are bike lanes for? Are bike lanes for this person, that person? Are they for electric vehicles? Are they not? Transit, how close is everybody in the community living to transit? Pretty close. But what's the frequency of our transit? Can we work with our transit partners to increase the frequency of transit? Is our transit able to move in our community, or is it getting stuck behind other vehicles and congestion? So thank you. And also a lot of my work, and this has all been happening already, but is coordinating with all of our regional transportation agencies and partners, and also our municipal partners, and also government of every level, because, you know, Evanston as a municipality touches even the federal level and the county level and the state level for funding, for coordination, for all these different things. So that is also part of my role. Boards and commissions. I was just at the ADA Advisory Committee, committee. It's a subcommittee. And this last week, this is an example of coming out to talk to the community at a ward meeting. So that is also part of the role, is making sure that our team at the city of Evanston is also communicating directly with Evanston residents. And yeah, that is really the gist of my role. This is a nice photo in downtown Evanston of Fountain Square. Sky's the limit. I'm an optimist. I think that, if you can't tell, I think we are at a place in the world where there is a lot wrong. A lot needs to change. A lot needs to change in our transportation system and much beyond that. But we can change it. There's a lot of possibility. We can invest in things that make sense, that people love, that people are excited about, and make things really work for folks. So that's the note I will leave you on. And I look forward to hearing from folks and, yeah, answering questions.
Yeah, let's do questions for Sarah for 2 minutes. And then we'll move on.
Sure. Hey, I saw that hand first. I'll let you ask
for another meeting. You might want to connect with the Center for Neighborhood Technology in 09, 08. Anyway, a couple of years ago, they came and did a study, looked at Evanston and presented some information. You might want to take a look at that.
Thank you.
The other was, you're getting rid of carbon monoxide and stuff, and you're getting transportation out of the low-income neighborhood. You're making the other part of the community unaccessible to them.
Can you say that one more time? I want to make sure I really heard you.
When you do your carbon study and you take in the things that give out the most carbon, which we know are buses, you take them away from community, which is the low income, which take away their access to other parts of the neighborhood. They talk about the Fifth Ward being a food desert. The last change they made with CTA, the changes they route, they took the access that people had to Sam in Food Club, because there was a bus that went over there that took them back home. Now they're not there.
Yeah, I took that bus.
So that, I want to address the couple different points. So yes, agree with you about Center for Neighborhood Technology. I haven't spoken to them yet in this role, but I definitely am planning on it. So thank you. Great nonprofit if anybody is interested in this stuff. On the topic of bus, so buses per capita are not, we don't consider them high carbon emitters. A bus is considered a green option. So we want more bus access. We want better bus access for Evanston residents. So the example that you gave of a route being cut, 2 routes being cut, and others, the 208 bus that I used to take to high school, that bus is no longer goes down Church the same way it did. Now they yeah.
Instead of having 4 blocks to it, you got to walk 5 or 6.
Yeah.
After a certain age, that become a little impossible.
Heard. So yes, a lot of different bus service in the region has been cut in recent years, and that's definitely something that we want to reverse. We want to do the exact opposite of that. Not only do we not want things being cut, we actually want to be increasing service. We want to be increasing lines. We want to be increasing frequency of service. So definitely hear you. And I actually maybe at the end, I can check in with you about the specific areas that you're talking about and then follow up on that. Okay. And there, yes. And I think I know you have a question.
Any chance of the streetcars coming back?
I think that's a good question. So I'm of the opinion that we can have an amazing transit system. I don't mean amazing by US standards because US standards are really low on the global scale. I mean amazing by global standards. There's really good transit systems on this earth. There's no reason that the wealthiest country on earth can't have amazing transit. So do I think streetcars are a possibility here? Yeah, I do. Do I think it's going to happen today or in the next 5 years or in the next 10 years? Not necessarily. Do I think that that is a very real possibility for Evanston and the region? Yes, I do. Long, can you unmute yourself?
Nope. Okay, can you hear me? I am, no. No.
Okay, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm going back to also the transportation. What kind of time frame do you have? Because what is going on now and what has been going on since the 250 started a PACE bus is that a pulse bus. That bus goes from downtown Evanston, makes minimal stops throughout Evanston. And that bus is now running every 10 to 15 minutes. And if you have to be at work, let's say at the hospital, whatever, Lutheran General or something, and you work along up and down Dempster Street, but not quite at Dempster and Dodge, you have to walk there. Or like I have to do some days, I have to take a bus west to take a bus back east to take another bus to go north because I'm going north in the morning. We also don't have a bus in the morning from like Ridge Avenue. The first bus basically starts 2 hours after I have to be at work. Same thing for along Dodge. These are both very traveled routes with businesses on each way. There is no. So I'd like to know the time frame on working on resolving this issue for people that need it now.
Heard. So just to repeat the question for folks who haven't heard, broadly, I understand the question to be there's a lot of issues with Evanston bus service right now, today. A lot of issues around frequency, a lot of issues around routing and all these things. What is the timeline in actually fixing this stuff? So I don't have a concrete date that I can provide right now. I've been in the role 2.5 months. So I need time to actually get into the role. Right now, what I have been doing is collecting information that people are giving me about their experience with different routes, and I'm trying to get it as specific as possible. So whatever people can share with me, and that right now I haven't written it down because I'm standing with a microphone standing up, but I do want to collect that specific information that you shared and also what our other community members shared. Ultimately, the next step after we do some collection and probably moving towards even a broader survey, because not everyone comes to stuff like this, like we need to actually reach out to the community and start really collecting this information, is getting really a solid idea of what we are asking for. So what is the frequency we are asking for? What are areas of Evanston that are not currently being served by transit in whatever way or format? And then bringing that to our partner agencies with clear objectives and saying, hey, this is what we need. How can we work with you to really make this happen? And what are some concrete timelines and objectives that we can actually mark together and work towards together? So I just want to say, like, I hear you. Our transportation system is not sufficiently serving people right now, especially people who have the least amount of options. So I hear you. I don't think it's right. And that's why I like this work and feel it's important. So heard. And maybe what we can do, my email is on this slide here. Perhaps if folks in the room, including yourself, if you could actually send me an email with concrete with concrete information that I can take and actually log, so I can actually take it to our transit partners once we get a little bit more organized, so that we can move some of this stuff forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we got, I see a hand there, and then there, and then there, and then there. Okay. You want to say it in the mic?
Yeah, sure. So, are there any plans to get like raised crosswalks and narrower roads to like prevent speeding?
Okay. So just in case folks in the back didn't hear, we had a question. Is there any plan to put in raised crosswalks around Evanston and also narrow roads for better and safer crossing? Does that summarize your question well? Yeah, to prevent speeding. Yes, also to prevent speeding. So yes, that's something that we've been talking with Public Works about. So right now, Evanston doesn't technically have raised crosswalks in the city. That's an intervention that I think is a really cool one, because you get a crosswalk and then it's kind of also a speed bump in this all in one. There's also a lot of really pretty things you can do with like landscaping and actually narrowing roads. And for folks who don't know, it's very well proven that the narrower travel lanes are of cars, both visually and also physically, the slower people go. So that's like a natural design thing that actually makes human beings move their cars slower in space. So yes, that is something that we're looking at. And there's probably even stuff that I don't even know exists yet, and probably even the team at Evanston that people are doing around the world that we could probably try here. So nothing concrete on that right now. We have to still work with like the fire department, and there's some different logistics with Public Works and maintenance to confirm before we can start actually putting stuff like that in. But yes, it's on the horizon.
So I have one thing to add. So I know a big pain point for a lot of folks in the 9th Ward is the Oakton corridor and the really delayed, Oakton corridor project, which was supposed to start in 2020. And I'm not sure what happened there, but, obviously got delayed because of the pandemic and everything. One of the things that we're trying out there is stamped crosswalks. Last year, they were supposed to be put in right at the end of the fall, and the weather did not cooperate. There's one at Benson near Oakton School, but they will be putting in stamped crosswalks right at Dawes, and that like visually is supposed to slow people down. And also like the landscaping there, if you see where they made some of the changes, they have narrowed the road at the crosswalks. But I like your idea about the raised crosswalks. That's something that in Europe, right there. It looks like brick, but visually people slow down just because it's visually stands out. Same thing with the landscaping. It just narrows the road and people naturally slow down. So that's coming in the next couple months.
Awesome. Okay. I'm not sure, but I'll let people take the lead on who I pointed to next. Okay.
I see. Welcome. One of the newspapers did a report about your background. It was largely with nonprofits. And these train systems here are valuable, but they've been here a long time. So I'm wondering, as you have stated, I think, that you have not actually begun working with the Metro and the CTA and all that. Who has done that? I've asked that for a couple of years now. Who has been working with these trains? I could give you a whole list of things that could be enhanced. And these I've been traveling the buses a lot since I sold my car 3 years ago. And I've traveled buses and trains my whole life because I grew up in Chicago. However, all these changes that these people are mentioning with the buses, the 250, the 208, the 213, the 234, which go through Evanston and Skokie and Morton Grove and Niles and Park Ridge and Mount Prospect, those changes have just occurred in the last year, partly due to money issues with the companies, okay, with the Metro and the Pace, with people not going to offices. So I think, how do you feel you are going to reverse that for these large companies? And who exactly else in the city are you working with that has experience with them? Yes.
Okay, so for anyone that didn't hear, the question was, hey, you've worked at a lot of nonprofits. Do you have experience working with transit agencies? Who else are you working with to support you? Are you really going to be able to tackle this? Is that?
I have another pair too. A little more. They're both pretty pretty.
Okay. Okay, so there's a couple different layers to that, so I'm going to answer the more system ones. So first of all, transit, as some folks in the room know, people are calling it a fiscal cliff for transit agencies in the region, and just generally this is a reality in the United States right now, where ridership has dropped because of COVID. That's a very significant trend. And basically a lot of the federal government was giving municipalities and transit agencies, funds to basically carry over during COVID so that these transit agencies wouldn't shut down. And even with that, because there was lower ridership and less money coming in from tickets, a lot of transit agencies, including in this region, cut service dramatically. So that's a reality right now. And there's actually work being done at the state level and a lot of different levels to actually secure ongoing money for all of these agencies around the country, because this is a national issue, first of all. Second of all, on my skills and abilities, since you brought that up. So I come from a campaigning background. I started doing organizing around Complete Streets when I was in my young 20s. I'm 34 for context. I was working with the Vancouver government in my young 20s. I've worked at the provincial level in Vancouver working on cycling education policy. I personally feel very adept at building relationships and navigating these things. I guess that's all I'll say on that. As far as who I'm working with, this is an interdisciplinary thing. So I'm working really closely with people in our public works department. I'm already working with transit agencies. So just to give me a little credit for things that are already happening on my job. So you're saying I haven't done this, I'm doing it. Just to be clear, I'm already working and speaking to Metra, Union Pacific, CTA, Divvy, Pace on a regular basis, including RTA, including as of this morning. So it's happening. As for reversing really huge trends that are happening at the national scale, I'd like to play a role in that. I think municipalities have a role to play in state policy. I think municipalities have a role to play in federal policy. I think Evanston could actually be a showcase and model for what municipalities can do on the national scale and beyond. So that's my interest. And I think there's a lot of possibilities for how we can reverse these trends. Sorry, I forgot to mention Cook County, Illinois Department of Transportation, US Department of Transportation. These are all agencies that we are working with. Skokie, Chicago Department of Transportation. Like, this is all transportation in my eyes is all relationship building. So this is very much in progress. Okay, I see a tall hand back there, and then right in front. We'll go to you. You don't have to, but it's helpful. Otherwise, I'll repeat what you said, whatever.
All right. So as you look at the landscape of transportation to Evanston coming into this, are there one or two things that you looked at and said, this is something we could do pretty quickly, something that we can improve within the next year or two, 1 or 2 years, as the consultants say, low hanging fruit?
So good question. So as far as low hanging fruit, that we can kind of take action on right away. So a program that I'm already working on is a bike voucher program, because right now it's harder to get transit agencies to move fast, and also transportation, as many in the room have pointed out, is an equity issue. So we're actually in the process already, in partnership with Northwestern, who funded us through the Good Neighbor Fund. We've got like a pilot project of $75,000 to create a bicycle voucher program, to start getting income qualified folks on bicycles. That's also going to include a percentage for electric bicycles for folks with accessibility challenges, or folks with accessibility needs, pardon me. And so that's, I would say, a lot of programming, which is something I have experience with in community settings, is some of the low hanging fruit. So infrastructure is always challenging, but also the city already has programs in progress to deal with some of these issues. So we already have a sidewalk improvement program. We already have sidewalk infill program. So these are things that my intention is also to get funding to expand these programs so we can fill sidewalks faster, so that we can actually improve sidewalks faster and actually just get programs that are already on the move really moving. Those are two examples that come to my mind. Also education, traffic safety education. That's something that we're going to be rolling out, hopefully actually already in the fall, and start piloting some stuff that we can actually do in the school system. Okay, and I think our friend here was reading.
Okay. I have like there's three things that I'm thinking, just kind of off the top of my mind that come to mind. What another commenter was talking about was the hours of service for public transportation, obviously starting earlier so people can get to places where they need work and school. But also, I think there's a number of routes that don't go far into the night. I know Dodge goes until like almost 10, but some of the other ones cut off way too early. So the hours that the service is available, I think that is clearly an issue when people are coming home. You know, kids are also coming home from extracurriculars at the high school and whatnot. Those go really late. And then the other thing is, you know, we talk a lot about, you know, the safety on the streets and this and that, but Evanston is just way too dark at night. And it's nice to have the old fashioned lights on the streets, but in my opinion, at the busy intersections, it's very dangerous. And the cars, you know, cars and bikes and people walking and people getting off the bus, it's just chaotic. And it can be, you know, really, especially if the weather is bad, very difficult to see. And I think that's really dangerous. And it also, you know, gives people pause, you know, if they need to be out at night. And of course, in the winter, we all know that, you know, it gets dark like, you know, 4 o'clock and kids are still coming home from school. And so that, I think, you know, at least at the main intersections, we need more light. We need more light. It's, you know, it's obviously a public works thing. And then lastly, you know, there's a big focus on bikes, and I think that's great. I you know, I myself like to bike, but we do have to remember that, you know, not everybody is able to ride bikes, or, you know, with weather issues and whatnot. So I think from, you know, I think priority should be public transit, then, you know, obviously pedestrian friendly, because that sort of is more of a broad range of people. Public transit, obviously, because that is the most deficient thing that we have in the city at this point, and bikes should be third. That's just my opinion.
Okay. I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you. I agree with everything you said. So, and thank you for bringing up the lights, because you're actually the first person that has brought that up specifically at intersections to me.
This is a policy question, but I'd like to illustrate it with a specific example. Can you hear me? Okay, this is a policy question, but I'd like to illustrate it with a specific example. This is Ashland Avenue south of Greenleaf. This is a very orderly neighborhood. People clean up after their dogs. They are careful with their gardens. This is not the Beverly Hillbillies. Every vehicle on the street is parked with 2 wheels on the parkway. Things that's doing is it's digging up cables. I don't know if these communications cables, utility cables, streetlight power cables on the side of the road. That's going to be a major infrastructure expense. And it's probably a safety hazard eventually. Years ago, we attempted to get this changed to a one-way street. It makes excellent sense because if you park on this street, you will get sideswiped. There's tens of thousands of dollars in property damage that's happening on that street every year. If a delivery vehicle is on that street, traffic is totally obstructed. You can't get any place. One woman organized a campaign to prevent that street from being turned into a one-way. It seems we're in a community situation where any individual or group who does not want anything changed has enormous leverage to prevent anything from happening. Now, I know your policy solution to this is going to be, let's feel good, let's build community. I want to know what practical steps can be taken to achieve some equity and balance between general public needs and a political situation in a city in which it's almost impossible to get anything done.
So that's a big question for all who heard it. In case you didn't, the question was about maybe I'll let council members guide our cutoff times. This is not, I'm not facilitating anything, but to respond to what you said. So community building is important for me. It's the foundation of everything, but it's not, that alone isn't a solution. So I would never just say community building is the answer. That's not, that would be an evasive and that would be a non-answer. So depending on what we're talking about. I think I can't speak to exactly what you're talking about. It sounds like a one-way street would potentially be a solution there, without actually going into the specifics of that and actually talking with our engineering team and things like that. I can't speak on the specifics of that, but it sounds like you've proposed something concrete. Again, I don't know the specific situation around the politics of what's going on there. I think things are moving at the city, but if you want to talk after, we can talk about maybe some next steps and follow up and actually hear which block we're really talking about so I can write it down. Okay, so we can follow up. Okay. Okay. We do have some more questions, but I'm gonna let you all, if anybody wants to talk to me or email me, please feel free. I'm gonna be around.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to cut folks off with questions. Thank you. Welcome. So glad you're here. Who is the appointed of Evanston Police Department's Traffic Safety Division. I'm not sure I got the terminology exactly right, but you can correct me.
The Sergeant of the Police Traffic Bureau. Not to disappoint, but I've only been in that role for 1 month. But, add a little background. I have been in the city for 19 years. I've been pretty much in in our where I was in a meeting, previous fourth ward council member in regards to traffic issues. Reggie Napier, knows him, long time Evans-tonian, but we're gonna go through a small slide deck. All right. After that. Can you hear me now? Online, can you hear me? Can anybody give me a thumbs up, wave, comment? Oh, thumbs up. Thank you. So we're gonna work through a short slide deck and then get right to the any questions and specific issues. So in the traffic bureau, I'm the lone supervisor. I report directly to my deputy chief, the chief, and pretty much any other supervisor that shares issues with our office. I currently have 4 officers assigned to me. They have a wide range of responsibilities. One of those, go back a few years, say we would have had 7 officers and 1 civilian employee. That civilian employee's full-time job was towing coordinator, so towing issues, and he also installed child car seats. He was phenomenal at it, and he had a lot of appointments. Currently, right now, we are not able to install the child car seats, and one of my officers handles all towing responsibilities of the 4. Other than that, so far year to date, we've had 60 specific complaint locations, and those are just things that have been provided to us. And I'll go into how those come in. But I know there's more. We already heard 2 more issues today in the earlier question. My officers also go to traffic crashes. They handle hit and run follow-ups. They do with abandoned autos. So if you ever seen the abandoned auto sticker, if you ever called in a 311 request for abandoned auto, those are my officers that handle those. A variety of equipment maintenance tips for all officers. Every new hire has to spend time in the traffic bureau, familiarizing himself with the traffic unit, handling the crashes, and writing traffic citations. Our officers are certified motor officers, so they ride motorcycles. That includes special events and escorts. And some of those escorts can be in town and out of town.
Sergeant, does this mean that only these 4 officers are doing traffic enforcement in Evanston?
No.
What about the other officers who are not in your department? Do they also do traffic enforcement?
So any officer can do traffic enforcement. That generally outside of traffic would fall to patrol. And that would be the other major unit that would be handling traffic enforcement. And they also would handle some traffic accidents as well, depending on the call volume. We also are heavily involved in the special event management, towing for special events, and special event security and operation. And then when our call volumes are too high and we're at short-staffed, our officers will just handle routine calls. So an officer could be pulled off something to go take a bike theft report. It's all hands on deck right now. So the big thing too is all of our traffic enforcement efforts with reimagining public safety and reimagining traffic enforcement. These matters that are important to us, our efforts focus on what we're talking about tonight: safety and crash reduction. So this is a brief traffic stop data. I had a little more information that on the slide that didn't pop up. Looks like just so in 2021 we're at 4,400 traffic stops. The next 2 years we're around the 3,700 traffic stops, and then this year to date we're roughly 1,948 traffic stops. That's today could be the last few days, depending on when it's updated. So this is all through the Transparency Hub for the police department. The other thing on here,
the number of stops have any correlation with the number of officers in your unit?
Can you repeat the question?
So do the number of stops correlate to the number of officers that are in a unit? So with the unit reduction, if we went back 2020, 2019, that's when you see the largest drop, and it would follow with the drop in traffic officers as well as the lower amount of patrol officers we have currently. What else was on this slide was we handle roughly 1,400 traffic crashes a year and roughly 400 hit and run investigations a year. So 365 days a year, that's over one a day that we're having. So this is how we receive, or I receive, and the previous supervisors have received traffic complaint locations. 311, whether you call in or you do it electronically, our council members reach out to us directly. Phone calls to my office. The employees, and then our social media accounts. So we are not the only ones that handle the traffic. Disseminate them out to all patrol officers so they can also monitor and enforce the situation. So year to date, for the wards that we're here for, these are the complaints that have come through and are logged. So they're kind of down through the wards. Some are the shared borders. You want me to read them out? I can.
This is where somebody calls 311 or 911 and said, hey, there's a problem at this intersection. Keep an eye.
Yep, and from council members reaching out to me and
a bunch of those. Yeah. So when you guys send me an email, so the ones for the 9th Ward, I know I specifically reached out to Sergeant Faison and Commander Sofier, but when you all say there's an issue there, they're always really great. It's like, is it a 2-week rotation? Can you talk usually? Yeah.
So it's dedicated time. There is a minimum of 2 weeks, depending on what we're seeing and from being there. So Nichols School has been an issue for a little bit longer than 2 weeks now, but my officer's been remaining with his time there due to the pedestrian violations with, so Nichols School, kids in the crosswalk, impatient cars coming trying to cut through the neighborhood, whether they're avoiding the Main Street construction, whatever it is, cars not yielding to the kids trying to get to school. So that one's been longer than 2 weeks just because my officer continues to see issues and continues to write tickets. So per state statute, pedestrian in the crosswalk would be that you're ready to step into the crosswalk and it's on your side. Does that make sense? The question is, what does pedestrian in a crosswalk mean? So that's the issue that's reported to us, like cars are not yielding to pedestrians in a crosswalk. Correct. Correct. Thank you. Some of this is just my yeah. So this is my shorthand for me. Yeah. Yes. So I understand. First off, I'm sorry to hear. First off, I'm sorry to hear about your injuries. So one of the residents here was run over by a car in the crosswalk. And the question is in regards to the punishment for the Unit 1, the offending driver that struck her. The fine cited was provided by the courthouse was $50. And then the other questions in regards to damages listed on the ticket, which is to the vehicle being estimated at $500. So yes, the courthouse. So our officers would follow the Illinois Vehicle Code and completing the traffic crash report and issuing the citation. So they would write that citation by law. That was the law that was violated. Your injuries would fall in the civil aspect of it and the insurance of the offending vehicle. The courthouse determines the fines. That's the county. The city has nothing to do with that. Does that help? Does that answer your question? No, I know it doesn't help. I know it doesn't help. Does it answer your question?
The underlying cause of thinning and dry lips for results that really last. Get your hands on City Lips today and join the millions of happy women who are in love with it.
Used for 2 weeks. Now it's a $1,500 coat rack. Smoke. Went once. Got a blister from the in-store try.
Questions in regard to penalties assessed, whether it's local level.
Why would we ever accept? Could we say, you know, override county law and say the penalty for something like that is $500, not $50? Could we do that legally?
Or some amount of jail time, you know, let's actually put a penalty on running down a human being.
I think our parking fines are higher than that.
They are. They are. We'd be superseded by the state.
Something is wrong with that ticket. If that ticket, if the man hits the lady, you have him turning, you have him hitting the car. Isn't there a spot on that ticket that says whether you hit a pedestrian or not? That ticket should show that.
This question on whether the ticket should show it.
If the driver hit a pedestrian, then y'all need to update y'all ticket.
Just for clarification, when you went to court, did the judge understand that it was an accident involved and the other party was there?
There were 2 court dates. The first one, the gentleman who hit me, who I must mention, was from Chicago, a Chicago driver. Was not there, but he was for the second one. I'm assuming his attorney. And Jonathan, I did look that up. It's at $50. Are you kidding me? I do believe, from what I read, that it's the discretion of the judge to have a higher citation. She called me something and I never, she said, you're a CW. I said, what is that? Complaining witness.
Okay, so it sounds like the judge understood that it was a traffic crash involved. That's why the other party was there, and that's why she was there as the victim.
But it still does not answer my question, which is, I'm your police officer. I come to the traffic and I see, oh, car made a turn, hit this lady.
So I understand completely what you're saying.
That's not on the.
Well, the judge wouldn't, the victim would not be there unless it's a traffic crash. So if I pulled someone over for disobeying the pedestrian in the crosswalk, just because they had the right of way, like they were about to step out and they were not hit. So if you're pedestrian and you have the right of way, you're about to step out in the marked crosswalk, you dodge it or the car misses you, I can pull that car over and write that driver a ticket. At that court date, there was no traffic crash. There would be no victim. It would be the officer and the person that I issued the citation to. Correct. And in this situation, the victim was at court. For the victim to be at court, it's because it's linked to a traffic crash. Correct. There's yes, there's a is there another? You want me to keep going with the questions?
Let's take a few more questions here, and then I want to get into infrastructure.
And first, I'll take the. Do you want to talk to the mics? Or?
Okay, we can just repeat. The mic is only for the people online, so we can repeat the question.
The question is, why would a pedestrian hit in a crosswalk not be attempted murder? So the difference would be intent. So the question is this manslaughter? All right. You.
Why do you get charged $75 if you miss them and $50 if you hit them? Why do you get charged more?
So why do you know someone that was charged more?
So like she said $75 for
Not missing. Oh, not missing parking. That's like leapfrog.
no.
So
I still think that $50 is pretty low. Yeah.
I agree, and our hands are out of
That's
that.
at the discretion of the judge.
Correct.
Right, a parking ticket is at the discretion of the city council to set that number.
And just for everyone knows, the tickets that the Evanston Police Department writes, if it's a state ticket that goes to the Skokie Courthouse, that is not a revenue generator for the city. It's not a revenue generator. If you go to court, a $50 fine, they probably had court costs. I don't know if you heard what they said, but it's like $245 court costs. That's automatic. That money, it doesn't all come to Evanston. Under $10 probably per ticket would come to Evanston. So when we write tickets, it's not a revenue generator for the city. We're doing it for the safety aspect of it.
Somebody said they're frustrated as a bike rider at the lack of traffic enforcement. At some point, short staffing ceases to be a valid excuse for lack of enforcement. So they did give context on what is happening. If you wish to unmute yourself, Skip, and give context, that'd be fine.
That was a comment by Skip, referenced bike enforcement.
I don't see Skip here.
I don't
Maybe
see
you
him
could just.
there anymore, but that was, he just says a bike rider needs to keep the enforcement of traffic for bikers.
So the best thing to do is when you have specific locations, let us know so we can assign our officers and patrol officers to go and target those areas. Like we've explained, like, so this is like 12 complaints for these 3 wards when we're at closer to 70 already year to date, when you count all the wards, with the other responsibilities. So staffing's not always going to be an excuse. So we have to be there though. We have to be there. We have to see it.
I think there's also an issue of education around that, because I have bicycled on Church Street, which there's a section of Church Street which has a bike lane going one direction, but not the other direction. And I actually had an older gentleman who pulled over and yelled at me for not being in the bicycle lane, which was for the opposite direction because I was heading west, not east. And he felt that I should have been in the bicycle lane because I was on a bicycle, and he felt that he had the right of way in his very large car.
All right. I can address you that, the one-way aspects on after. We can talk about that. And
But it's infrastructure, which we're about to talk about here.
Yeah.
So
My complaint is about bicyclists who are not obeying the traffic signals. I was pulling out from Greenleaf onto Dodge, and it was green light, and I was just about to pull away when this bicyclist comes flying through when he should have stopped. Problem on both sides.
All the studies say that cars.
there's an issue about bicyclists not following the road, the rules of the road.
I would have hit him, but he went, and I probably would have gotten a ticket, but he went, I had the green light, he had a red light, and he didn't stop.
yeah.
Huh?
This, let me call this conversation to order. So there's a question about enforcement of bicycles that are breaking the rules of the road. A comment that cars break the rules just as often, but bicyclists do have a responsibility as well to stop at stop signs, yield to pedestrians, etc. Do bicyclists ever get ticketed?
They have, no. So bicyclists have been ticketed. But I don't have the data right now. I can't show you how many years ago it was, if it was this year, if it was 4 years ago. But bicyclists have been ticketed. And if a bicyclist is at fault in a traffic crash, then they would be ticketed, especially if and when, because it's a traffic crash and it's civil, we need the other driver to be willing to want to go to court as the victim to show up. Because without that victim there in court, when it's a traffic crash, that ticket is dismissed. Unless my officer happened to be right there and witness it. Traffic crash, that ticket, both parties need to be there.
One more question from Jeff, who's a very respectful cyclist.
Thanks. Question about device use at the wheel.
Good.
I know that historically there's been a box on forms you fill out for DUI. Is there a box for distracted driving as a result of using a device?
For a traffic crash, anything. Okay. So in a traffic, just any traffic citation, is it against the law to using an electronic device without hands-free communication? I'm sorry, I'm not specifically understanding the question, but we do stop cars specifically for using an electronic device without a hands-free system.
It indicates that on the.
Oh, the law. We could get you the data on all the tickets we've written for distracted driving, if that's what you mean.
I asked the question because I think it's the case that distracted driving as a result of using a device, the wheel is catching up to DUI, causing crash. It's even past DUI.
So there's a separate ticket. So if you don't cause a crash and you're caught using, like, holding on your cell phone, talking, texting, watching a movie, and we write you a ticket, that's one thing. It's a separate ticket if you are doing that while involved in a crash. It's a separate charge. But we do issue tickets. We just released. I don't want to make for Memorial Day. We just did the post campaign press release with how many distracted driving tickets were issued during that. It was over 10, in a week alone. So, but I don't have it in front of me. So. So it goes right into like our main focus, because when you're distracted driving, it does cause more crashes. So speed, distracted driving, seatbelts, and pedestrian issues. question about marijuana use. It 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 is illegal to use while driving, and then it is potentially a DUI if the medical tests show that your level is to a certain extent. Understood.
All right. Sergeant Faison will be here afterwards if anybody has any additional questions. Thank you for your time, sir. I'm going to address infrastructure issues, and we were hopeful. We were hoping to have somebody from the Public Works Department here, an actual practicing engineer rather than a former engineer. For a variety of reasons, folks are out of town. There's a medical emergency. They can't be here, so I'm pinch hitting. So please forgive me if I'm not spot on and fully briefed on every single little thing. And I'm going to ask for help from my colleagues and Sarah Flax too. If I say something wrong, or if I should say something that I'm not, please feel free to jump in. I want to start by sharing an example of traffic calming infrastructure that it really kind of supports what Sarah talked about earlier. And Aaron, this is where you were going too. I was up in Traverse City, Michigan, visiting some family last summer, and saw traffic calming in action. This is what the street looked like before they did anything. Two lanes of traffic, eastbound, westbound, with a right turn lane right there. That was the before picture. Now here's the after. After they built this new building here, put in a crosswalk from the south side of the street to the north side of the street, but they also constricted, I don't know what, there's probably a name for it, this type of traffic calming technique, a constrictor, road diet. Well, or to me, as a former engineer, this is a Venturi tube right here. So they bumped out the curb here. Bumped out the curb a little bit more on the south side and put a little island in the middle here. So that has the effect of constricting the road. It doesn't actually narrow the lanes though. If you look at it from the street level, the lanes of traffic are still whatever the standard width are, but by bumping out the curb and putting this island in the middle, it psychologically feels tighter, and humans being humans tend to slow down when presented with something like this. So this is a perfect example of what Sarah was talking about in the zero. What's the Vision Zero is using psychology and normal human behavior to work in our favor. So that's what a design like this does. Sure.
Does the placement of the bike lane?
This is not a bike lane. This is a turn lane here.
Yeah, you see it in the back.
Bike lane over here. Yeah.
Does that make it safer for bikers to have the parkway between the cars?
Totally does. Not an expert, but I'm going to say yes. All right. So
I'm not an expert. So that's why.
Hopefully this video will work, but here's what it looks like in action. And you can see the cars slowing down as they approach this, right? Like, am I the only one who sees this? Right? I don't think it is. It's maybe a stamped crosswalk or something like that. It's not actually raised. Is it? Okay. But this is an example of the kind of infrastructure that we're talking about. And Aaron, this is the kind of thing that you were hoping that we would get into. So just wanted to share that example with you. This is, when I saw this, for myself with my own eyes a year and a half ago, it really kind of brought home to me the impact that thoughtful design can have on achieving these objectives of making the roads safer, not only for cars, but also pedestrians and cyclists as well. So we have some of this here for sure. So what I want to do now is very briefly run you through some infrastructure projects that have been completed, are in process, and are planned. So one project that has recently been completed was the Ridge Avenue corridor. It runs through all of our wards. So this was from Oakton up to Church. We made some upgrades to traffic signals, improved the alignment at some intersections. We added some left turn lanes and left turn signals at some of the major cross streets here. So this project is complete. It wrapped up towards the end of last year. The final step in this project was to recalibrate all of the street light signals in the regional network. So hopefully everything is running smoothly here. This is kind of phase 2 of a project that phase 1 included some similar intersection improvements, I think at Grove Street, maybe several years back. And the data clearly shows, if you look at the EPD traffic data, that once these changes are in place, the number of traffic incidents definitely goes down to 0. Not yet, but hopefully we'll be able to get there eventually. So this project is done. Number of projects that are currently in process. Juan mentioned the Oakton Corridor project. I'm not sure how long this one has been in the works, but it runs from Asbury to the west side of the city and includes some of these traffic bump outs that we were talking about earlier. I don't have a visual of that stamped crosswalk.
I can.
But some of those bump outs, and this one is going to be wrapped up by the end of July, according to what Director Kane, I captured Edgar's data here. Yeah. So I don't need to read this whole thing. Incidentally, this presentation in PDF format will be posted online. So anything that we run through too fast here, you can grab online later. Question here. The question is about the change to the crosswalk at Oakton and Gray appears to now be causing a traffic backlog. I don't want to pretend to know more than I do about traffic design. So if either of the Sarahs want to jump in, please feel free. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that question. But I think the overall point is to make the intersection safer for the pedestrians. And if that means the cars have to wait a little bit, then so be it. So.
Why would we allow people to pass on the right?
I'm going to keep going here. Like there are more changes like this one afoot. The intent of these changes is to make life safer for everybody using the infrastructure. Not only cars, but also pedestrians and cyclists. So there will be changes. The idea is to make life safer, reduce the chance of accidents happening, ideally to 0 if we do this right. So another major project currently in process in the home stretch here, I hope, is the Main Street project. Incidentally, as the council member who represents those businesses on the street, I have to remind you that they remain open. Please shop on Main Street. This one is phase 2 of the project, which phase 1 occurred a couple years ago to replace the water main. Phase 2 is to completely redo the streetscape. This goes from Maple to Hinman. This one is on track, and weather permitting, hopefully we'll finish on time in mid-September rather. So this project will feature another one of those traffic constrictors right here. This is between the former Vogue Fabrics, which is now Tapestry Station, and the parking lot across the street. It's going to have a bump out there. And there's also going to be a bump out at the corner over here at Custer and Main. So we're putting into action some of these theories that will hopefully make life safer for everybody. Quick question.
Just a quick question, is Custer Street Oasis closed because of construction, or is it just over?
Question about Custer Street Oasis, which is the awesome kind of road closure with restaurants down here. It is coming back as soon as weather permits, and as soon as Eric Young at La Principal is ready to set it up. So it's coming. It's been a kind of cold spring. So I talked to him a couple days ago, and he's getting ready to do it. But so yeah, there's another, at least a design view of that bump out. I don't know if that's going to be a raised crosswalk or not. It kind of looks like it here, but this is just a rendering. Is it raised? Okay. All right. So Main Street, shop at those businesses. The project will hopefully be over by mid-September. Another project going on right now. This one is a lot quicker and a lot less expensive. We're replacing the bike path at James Park with some additional trees, additional landscaping. Anything else to?
Well, the other piece of that, and I'm not sure if they'll be done with. So there is a bike path next to the sidewalk now going to Dawes, and so one of the intents was to be able to connect the school all the way to the Channel Trail. So I'm not sure if that's completely done, but yeah, but that's I think part of the project there.
Cool. All right, so that was an overview of at least some of the current projects that are happening this summer. I want to take a look forward at projects that have been in the works for some time, but we haven't yet mobilized the bulldozers on them. First, I will talk about the Chicago Avenue Corridor project, Howard to Davis. And this is actually kind of phase 2 of the Davis to Isabella project that was, starts on Chicago and then continues once Chicago merges with Sheridan, that bike lane there. That's how long that was, 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. That bike lane is going to be continued all the way down to Howard Street with this portion of the project. So complete streets, multimodal project, looking at pedestrian and bike infrastructure, public transportation infrastructure, doing improvements to the streetscape to activate public places and make it just a friendlier place for people to be, improving some utilities. And that's what happened most recently is I think it was a water main project on Chicago. We wanted to obviously phase those projects to do the water main first before you repave the street. How stupid would it be to do that in reverse order? So what that means is the street is torn up for longer than it might seem like it's necessary, but there is some rhyme to that. There is some rhyme to that reason. So the last but not least, that street will be resurfaced, but it's much more than just a street resurfacing project. Yeah.
That maybe there could be an opportunity for people who are, involved in the parking. From within
Yeah. So we have a comment from a business owner on Chicago Avenue that when we are in the design phase of this project, to make sure we're considering parking for the businesses. That's a good opportunity for me to talk about the public engagement that's already happened. I don't have a slide on that, but this goes back a couple of years. There have been at least 2, maybe 3 public engagement sessions that you might have been at, one or more of them, right? So the process is designed to capture input like this. And Sarah Flax, Director of Community Development, wants to weigh in here. Yeah. If I could jump in here. So Sarah Flax has reminded us that the project on South Boulevard includes 20 parking spots for non-residents. Might not be close enough to the businesses on Chicago Street. Then there's another question about how much parking should be required for residential buildings. That is a great question that is worthy of probably 5 more community meetings. And I don't want to get into that right now. If I could just gracefully dodge that question, because this is something that is on our radar, talking about reducing the legally required number of parking spots, because in the old days, when everybody was assumed to have, 1 car per adult, we ended up building way more parking than we needed, which has the effect of increasing housing costs. And so we need to reckon with this situation, and are going to be having a conversation to take some action. Not sure what that's going to look like yet, because there needs to be a lot of engagement. But But back to the infrastructure project here. I said 2026. I'm not sure. That's why this number is highlighted in yellow and red, because I don't know. Do you guys know? Sarah, do you know? No earlier than 2026, maybe later. So don't quote me on it, because we're still in the design phase. Church Street is another project that's been in the works for a while, still in phase 1 engineering, pending IDOT approval. And I should mention at this point that most, if not all, of these major infrastructure projects have some level of involvement with the Illinois Department of Transportation, which is a state bureaucracy, and increases cost, complexity, and time. Although they help us pay for it. So, it's worth that hassle, but it does add some additional, time and burden on the project. So this project is designed to improve pedestrian safety on Church west of Dodge. It's designed to fill in the gap in the bike route on Church west of Dodge. And it's not actually on Church Street, but for some reason it's kind of included in this project. We're also going to be filling in the gap on the trail on the east side of the channel between Dempster and Church. So a lot of good stuff happening here. Timeline is, I don't know, 3-4 years. Sarah, is that something like that? But in the works. So still in the design phase, no final decisions have been made, but 3 possibilities for integrating bike lanes might look something like this. And any design alternative that moves forward would include these kind of elements: marked crosswalks, ADA ramps, lighting, which somebody mentioned, the curb extensions, and traffic signals. So that is kind of an overview of a couple of the big future projects. Meanwhile, we have some kind of ongoing initiatives that were happening last year, year before that, this year, and will continue to happen for the next few years. One of these initiatives is our sidewalk infill project. Now, we used to have a 50-50 program for sidewalks, where if you wanted your sidewalk replaced in front of your house, you threw in 50%, the city would cover the other 50%, and that's how we handled it. We have moved away from that model because it was really inequitable. And we have sidewalk needs in neighborhoods that are lower income, where asking homeowners to pay even 50% was a significant burden. So in the interest of equity, what we are doing now is kind of a proactive citywide approach to replace or even in some cases fill in sidewalks that don't exist, replace or repair when that is required, citywide in a kind of phased manner here. So we're prioritizing school routes and sidewalks near senior living facilities. Next on the list is hospitals, medical centers, et cetera, et cetera. The bad news for those of us who just live in a house, on a street, in a neighborhood, is that those sidewalks are lowest on the priority list. If you do have some money to spend and want to get your sidewalk replaced sooner rather than later, we have what I will now call a 0-100 program. Where if you as the homeowner want to pay the full cost, the city will, kind of let you join our contract, and you can get the city's rate on the sidewalk replacement, rather than hiring somebody on your own and paying more. I don't know exactly how much that would save, but not nothing.
But be clear, if you have issues that are health and life safety, you need to reach out to your alder person, as people have done in my community in the second ward. I had somebody and had wheelchair issues. We're fixing that right away. We're not going to say, oh yeah, wait till phase 7. So if there are issues that hinder life safety or those aspects, please reach out to your council member so that we can have that assessed and put on the list.
Councilmember Harris is reminding us that there are kind of acute safety issues with sidewalks. We're not going to necessarily wait until we get to them. Please let your council member know, and we can bump that up on the list. Well, we will have it assessed. I would also encourage folks to use the 311 to report broken and damaged sidewalks. Like, the 311 system is awesome for that. And it honestly saves council members a lot of work if because if you fill in the 311 request, that goes straight to the person who can do something about it, rather than sitting in my inbox for a while. Speed humps or speed bumps, city calls them speed humps for some reason, is a kind of a common concern that I get. They're not infrequent. Juan and Chrissy, same for you, every once in a while. So speed humps can be installed really only on residential streets. They cannot be installed on busy streets, on truck routes, snow routes, near hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. So if you think your block is suitable for a speed hump, or you would like to have a speed hump, the procedure is to circulate a petition amongst your neighbors on the street, and that goes to the city's, involve your city council member, involve your alderman in this as well. But circulate the petition, and then with enough signatures and with the go ahead from our traffic engineers, who will do their kind of initial assessment, we will then do a traffic count to put one of those hoses that runs across the street that clicks every time a car goes over it. If it still makes sense at that point to consider adding a speed bump, once that data is analyzed, then the city sends postcards to every residence on the block. If a majority of folks who send those postcards back are in favor, then the project and the engineering department approves, and if the city council member is on board, then the project can get placed in the queue. How long it would take to get attention at that point depends on a number of things, including funding, including weather, including other projects that might be in the works. Like if the water main is going to be replaced on that street next year, we're probably going to wait until the following year to put a speed bump on it. So, question J. Question from Jay is, how do you find out what category your street is in? I was wondering the same thing as I was putting this slide together. Didn't have a chance to check and see if there's a map.
It doesn't matter. Reach out to your council member. We reach out to the staff and they let us know. They know.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna ever know that. But Rajiv knows that and will say.
Somewhere, somebody's got a map with, green is residential and orange is this and that, but just, yeah, contact the council member and let us know.
I know we do. And I don't know what to do because two teenagers almost got hit the other day. Because I can hear it when they slam on the brakes. And it's arterial street, Greenwood is. So I don't know what the solution is. That's something
We are looking at that project. What it changes.
Question about Greenwood, specifically at Gray.
Okay, thank you. We have been looking at that. What the problem presents, Rajiv has been out. We can change that up, but it changes that whole parking structure on Greenwood where, so that we have looked at that and we're trying to figure that whole process out. And that's part of the walkable school project that we're looking at. Our students do take that street. And like I said, I live on Greenwood. I hear them up and down. And I want to be the pedestrian who doesn't move out the street, but not for $50. No, we're not doing that. I'm sorry about that, but that's not acceptable. But we do have those problems in certain streets. But it takes some data and research on how do we, fix that around.
All right, so the speed hump program is, kind of always ongoing. I want to talk about crosswalks, and here I'm referencing a presentation that the Public Works Director gave to City Council a year ago. I'm going to run through this really quick since it's getting late, but yeah, at least as of a year ago, there were 67 marked crosswalks in Evanston that were not at controlled intersections. And often folks are requesting requesting crosswalks that would be added to this list at somewhere other than a marked intersection. Main takeaway from this slide is that just because a crosswalk location is desirable doesn't necessarily make it safe. There are a lot of factors involved here. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert, but it doesn't mean we can't take a look at something. It doesn't mean we shouldn't take a look at something. General types of crosswalks here. There are special signage for senior crosswalks, special signage for parks. We are moving away from those flag type crosswalks because those flags tend to move away on their own. So that's no longer going to be on our portfolio. And then additional marking for school crosswalks. So, and then one, at least ballpark number here, to do a curb extension like that, ballpark costs $40,000. So I've run through that fairly quickly. At this point, with time rapidly ticking, I want to throw the room open for the airing of grievances. If folks haven't already let us know about specific Yeah, specific concerns at specific intersections. And I will ask somebody to, maybe Sarah, to take these notes, and yeah, and we're recording too. So let's be judicious with the use of the microphone.
I urge everyone to fill out the Envision Evanston 2045 questionnaire. It's, talking about our comprehensive plan and zoning. And part of what goes into the comprehensive plan is what you want our city to look like. So, things like raised crosswalks is something you can give feedback on in this survey. And this is something we're going to be really leaning on when we approve a new comprehensive plan, hopefully in the fall. So a lot of this really rolls into that. I just highly suggest people fill that out. Yeah, sure. Yes.
Force people to go to speed limit, but that's going to take. Cars travel so fast on the roads that they are. I don't see any indication that they even intend to stop for crossing. And that is incredibly dangerous, and it's also a huge barrier for most of our population to get to our businesses with your downtown.
Yeah.
Obviously, Ridge was never designed for motor vehicle traffic, and we haven't done anything to make it acceptable for motor vehicle traffic, but here we are. We got to do something to make Ridge crossing.
Yeah. That's literally the only thing I don't like about my neighborhood, because I live right on Ridge, and me and my kid almost got hit by someone making a crazy left-hand turn. Probably the scariest day of my life, but totally agree. We'll put that down on the list. We have that man here. Mm-hmm.
And like, even you cannot drive straight across a ridge, like on the smaller streets, like walk to the next.
Yeah.
You have you have the absolute right. You have the absolute right to cross at every one of those intersections. And they don't even have paint on the asphalt. It's insane.
So one thing I've in talking to our traffic engineers, I think I've been told that there is a liability factor if you would put in like a painted crosswalk at one of these smaller side streets across Ridge, because like you all know, like people just don't stop. Yeah. And so yeah. So
you're not the person to argue this.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
That there is crosswalk everywhere.
Yeah. No.
And they're going 40 miles an hour. And it's such an incredibly dangerous situation. Why would you dig a moat filled with crocodiles in the middle of our town? It's insane.
Okay. Yeah.
So with Ridge, like some of these side streets, like you can't just go across Greenwood, across Ridge, and as a pedestrian have the right of way. The cars would have the right of way. At Dempster, where you have a marked crosswalk and a traffic signal, the pedestrian has the right of way. Lake, the light with the signal. It has to be more than that, like what they're saying with the traffic engineers. So as a pedestrian, if you just step out in front of a car, the very next statute in the IVC after if I disobey a pedestrian crosswalk is a pedestrian stepping in front of a car that has the right of way. So then the pedestrian would be at fault. If you're talking like at Greenwood where there's not a marked crosswalk in the street or a traffic signal, they're not going to stop. They don't have to stop. But I will say, like the slide showed, our crashes are down considerably with the changes that were done on the north side of Ridge through there and with the different signage and the traffic signals. But we still observe that speeding is an issue, and we continue to rate tickets on Ridge to this day.
That's written into the statutes.
All right. Okay, we'll go to the back first. Someone who hasn't I haven't heard. Quick, yes. Okay. Had to, yeah.
Also, people don't go around it like that. And, so you're supposed to go around it this way, they cut this cut, so it's very, very unsafe. And big vehicles, fire trucks, other trucks, everything, they can barely make it around. I think, I assume the city is not gonna do anything, but I think that is an infrastructure that was a failure, and people just did not think about it. And I have read studies that when you put in speed bumps, when you do other things like that, actually it doesn't slow down because people just take off like crazy.
So we have.
Especially at night, you've got these drunk drivers going down Greenleaf, they'll go right over the thing, and then they get out of control and they get out of the car. Only if you want to talk about this.
Okay, so we have Greenleaf, the traffic circles, and people not slowing down for that. Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So we have something to keep in mind as we make the Chicago multimodal changes, how that'll affect our other arterial streets. And I think you had. Yep. Okay.
The letter that came about the lead pipes was very confusing. It
Mhm.
seems some people get it for free. Some people have to have certain pipes in front of their house. Can you explain that a little bit? Are we all going to have our pipes changed?
There's a video explainer. I also put something in my newsletter. But basically that was a requirement by the Illinois EPA that we had to notify everyone of the potential health risks. In talking to Water Bureau Chief Daryl King, we have additives in the water to mitigate any lead pipes, and there's nothing that anyone has to do. I mean, if you have questions, you can email your council person. There's a really good video that he put out just because it did end up being more confusing than helpful, just because of the legalese that we had to let everyone know about. Yeah. Yeah.
So two things. One, does left turn lanes or added right turn lane help to mitigate? I think the corner of Church and Dodge can be very, very, not corner, Lake and Dodge can be very, very busy, especially during
School,
certain hours
yeah.
of the day. And people are crossing there. Maybe if there was a turn lane. And then
Lake.
Yeah, like.
I was gonna say, there's one there that is on Dodge.
So
Yeah, well, going west on Lake, I think there were a turn lane, either a right turn lane or also a left turn lane, because people do, I think, rush there. And then wondering if there's the opportunity to put a bike lane for students on Lake Street going west.
Yeah.
Especially at I think up to Dodge is cool, because I think most kids actually ride on the sidewalk. But then when they cross Dodge, they tend to, ride on Lake Street, which can be very busy.
Yeah. So we have Lake and Dodge, just for the folks that watching on Zoom, concerns about Lake and Dodge, potential left and right turn lanes, and the looking into the potential of a bike lane, at least westbound. I personally like when there's the protected bike lane going both ways. Yeah.
Other side, on Church.
Yeah.
There's a
Oh, yeah.
bridge that goes through
Mhm.
the trees, kind of.
Anything about making safer the transition from Evanston to Skokie over the, over McCormick, going east to west, west to east. There's really no good way to take a bicycle. College Street, Oakton, Maine, Dixon, all those places are kind of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially on the bike.
Um,
They don't even cut the trees down.
I agree. So we had our first meeting with the team from Skokie, myself and some of our public works engineers, and also director of public works. And we met with Skokie and some of their main engineers about actually connecting the Church Street plans that both municipalities have as a first step to actually starting to deal with that those safety issues. And we're also going to be coordinating with the MWRD, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, which owns the bridge and a lot of the bridges between them. So, and also McCormick is an IDOT road. So that's a lot of the coordination that I was mentioning before for our friends. So MWRD, I'm in the process of setting up a meeting with them right now. And yeah, then we're going to all meet.
And that's your council member know, I ride. Right, so getting on that bridge can be really bad. Let your council member know. We try to get somebody out there. I actually cut branches down myself.
I'll do that.
So, you had a question?
I just.
Yeah.
No, I was just piggybacking because we were talking about the high school and I thought I'd just give my 2 cents. Going north on Dodge, those kids are turning, to get into the high school, they take a lot. And it scares me, watching them make that left, because they've got that nice bike lane going north on Dodge. It's lovely, but they don't have a great way to get across Dodge to get into the high school. And then you've got the cars also dropping kids off.
Okay, so we have concern about the bike lanes and turning by the high school on Dodge. And
I know the city's planning to resurface the stretch of Elm Street and Planet Crown Center in the next maybe 2 to 5 years. I think that'd be a great opportunity for an east-west protected bike lane going through this area, connecting Skokie, those bike lanes. Really just anytime we're resurfacing a street, I think we should be considering how we could incorporate protected bike infrastructure. Because there have been a lot of road projects that have improved conditions for pedestrians and for drivers, but there's not space for cyclists. I was hit by a truck out here very recently when I was on my bike. So it's a very heavily traveled area right by the school and Crown Center. It'd be great to have a safer way to get there.
yep, we have a plug for Main Street protected bike lanes, which would be great. And we have
more generally. So I graduated from UTHS last year. I think the routes and the treatments there are almost there, but they're incomplete. Especially that west side sidewalk just north of the school on Dodge. That is like 2 feet wide, and it has trees growing into it all the time. And naturally, crowds of students that are walking away from school are walking the bike lane. And then if you're on a bike, you've got to bump out into the street, and then you get hit by a car. So I think that there's that. There's the fact that we have 14-foot lanes here on Main, adjacent to the community center, adjacent to the school. Like that's unconscionable. That is a really wide lane. 10 to 15 miles above the 20 mile per hour speed limit. And to my knowledge, the engineering on the project has not been looking at creating
especially safe bike routes to school, please get safe bike routes to here, or any real narrowing measures. Again, a 14-foot lane is like a McCormick. It's pretty ridiculous that is in this place. So yeah, I think we're seeing eight of the east-west connectivity, especially for non-car transit, and around the way that we look at schools and don't do much for schools. And I think that those are specific pick up on and to try to prioritize, especially in the context of our most vulnerable road users, see school children, see bicyclists, etc.
Thanks. So another plug for narrowing the lanes on Main and also paying more attention to the school routes. I want to give our staff who was here, like Sergeant Faison and Sarah Fiorito, a shout out. We had a really good meeting like a month and a half ago with administrators from D65 talking about DAWs because of like the Oakton issues with people not stopping. They had, even with the crossing guards there, they had people just blowing by them like while they had crossing guards there. So one of the things that they were really proactive about was getting a special watch, which helped, and increasing the patrol. And also for whatever reason, the like automated speed limit signs, the blinking digital ones, there weren't ones at Dawes, which was kind of strange because there's ones by Chute and ones by Oakton, which were never put in. So staff was really quick, and within like a week we got them put up. And I think that's, every little improvement helps. I think kind of having a non-ad hoc method of going about this helps. So but yeah, I totally agree. We could do a lot about also finding out like how the kids get to school so we can make some more informed decisions about our infrastructure. So yes, yeah, because I know, at least for me as a parent, a bike lane, I'm comfortable in the road riding my bike, but most kids, especially younger kids, are not safe unless they have a protected bike lane. Oh yes, yeah, because I like my wife would not be comfortable in like a non-protected lane.
What's the barrier to putting the traffic cameras automatically enforced?
Yeah, that's a really thorny issue. I know. Yeah, I mean, I think people don't like the idea of surveillance and cameras. I think, our neighbors to the south, Chicago, are, I think, a little bit overzealous. I got a ticket for going 7 miles over, and like apparently it was a school zone because I went past Lane Tech High School and I was going 27, which like during like I thought that was a little, I paid it, but I mean that's part of this discussion. I think with Commander Sophia, we've had that talk. I haven't talked with Sergeant Faison. Yeah, I think.
But some of this, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. We also have to be accountable and not, residents have to slow down. Your guests have to slow down. The city cannot be everywhere. And we have to take personal onus and own, self-included, to slow down, right? And make that a personal, I asked Sergeant Sophia, he made a video. Because I said, let's make it fun where people can engage and understand what happens when you're speeding, because you don't think about it until it's a problem. Say it again. Are they? I think, okay. But again, that's a person, people are making personal decisions, the circles, right? But we can't be everywhere, but we have to do that collectively. That's all I'm saying. We have to make decisions as well. I agree though.
And I think there's some limitations around the speed limit because of the IDOT being involved, but that is something like, for example, I know came up as something we need to research about, like Asbury, because that's like another main thoroughfare that's like really, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's okay. People can.
So I go to Nichols, and at Nichols at least, I think it would be very helpful to have more protected bike infrastructure. Like I think that many more people would bike to school because like we have a giant bike rack there, but biking in many directions is very unsafe. Like Chicago Avenue is like a barrier. People don't want to go through there. They don't want to bike down it for sure, and they don't even want to cross it. Main Street is tough. The intersection right outside of Nichols is like really like the cars are trying to cut through there, like Greenleaf and Elmwood. Yeah, Greenleaf and Elmwood. That intersection is really dangerous. But then just trying to get out west is hard because there's a lot of cars that are also like going down that same street. So then, and it's so nerve-wracking when there's a car behind you and like it feels like they're trying to get around you and it feels like they're gonna hit you. So it would be so much better to just like on Greenleaf, for example, have like those flexible poles that at least provide some visibility, or maybe like a curb separating a bike lane.
Thank you. Yeah. Sure.
This affects everyone in the room. The alderman would have a big input. The governor has eliminated the sales tax on groceries. And so there's the Evanston city tax on groceries, not restaurants, groceries, 2% or whatever. The state is eliminating their 1%. It's a very regressive tax. Evanston is extremely progressive. How about the alderman voting to get rid of the 1% sales tax on groceries you buy at the grocery store? California and New York, the two highest tax states in the nation, have zero tax on groceries.
Okay. I'll look into it. I'm not. This is the first we just talked about the liquor sales tax and we're lowering that. So I'd be willing to look into that, but thanks for that idea.
Sales tax does not apply to groceries.
That's
no, it's 2%. If you look at your go to the valley after this, buy something, it's 2.25.
Okay.
Dude. I don't see any more questions on transportation. So since it is, oh my goodness, the longest board meeting ever.
Yeah.
No, second ward, we go all night.
But divided by 3, maybe,
somewhat below average. So
yeah, thank you all for coming. One announcement, I have office hours from 11 to noon tomorrow at Repres Roasters if anyone wants to hear me talk more.
This is a special ward meeting. The regular 4th ward meeting will happen in this room next Tuesday, 7 o'clock. This topic is going to be city finances, which is the 6th of the 6 city council goals. We've been doing a series. So 4th ward residents and anyone else, see you next week.
Thank you. And I won't take a lot of time, but there was a comment made earlier. I don't know who was here or who wasn't about the Wesley and the police. And I did get clarity from the 5th ward alderperson or council member Burns. There were police there to clear the building and the building was already supposed to be clear. If anybody watches TV or the news, and I very rarely do that, there was an incident in Harvey where people were boarded into their buildings because they did not check the buildings. That was the only reason the police were there, to make sure the buildings were checked.
I mean, each apartment, each unit was checked. So misinformation on this subject, I want to be really clear. Evanston has been generous beyond means in this Wesley project that was not a Evanston building. I want to be really clear about that. And there's never anything you can do to displace somebody to make that better. But Evanston worked really hard. The Fifth Ward council member worked really hard to go above and beyond. And if you look at our neighboring, and I got to be clear about this, and I don't care what people have to say afterwards. But if you look at our neighboring communities, when you are displaced, you are just displaced. No one pays your rent. No one helps you move. No one pays for your storage. Any community around us, you show me where they do that at thousands and thousands of dollars. So when we say Evanston is not caring and that we did this, that's not the full truth. And that was not an Evanston building that we were really not responsible for, but we felt compelled to help our residents with tax dollars while we talk about decreasing how we're taxing people. So I'm going to stand up for that. And I'm going to call out here on out every time somebody, along with other people, make false statements, because that's really hard when somebody condemns and tells that they wish God will come down on the 9 of us because we didn't help them. And we're paying for hotels for months. We're paying for food. We're paying for storage. That's evil. That's what's evil, to wish harm on people who are trying to help. So I just want to be clear about that. And I hope it's taped. Yep.
Man.
The people that own it. Not Evanston. We don't own it. The person became ill and couldn't do that. And it wasn't brought to our attention until late. And then we wanted to be Captain Save somebody. And we did that because yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Thank you all. I answered the question I said I was going to answer. Let me stop. Yeah, I'm about to stop. Yeah, he's not going to keep doing that. Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody. Thank you all for being here.